Hey, so as promised, here is finally an update on everything. And I'm so sorry. I did one yesterday, but you deserved better audio. And quite frankly, I needed to really trim it down. So let me just start off. Let's start off by wrapping up Danny Masterson, okay? So we can just finally put the cork in the jug on that one. So as I'm sure you're all aware, Bijou Phillips has flown the coop. That wasn't too shocking, now was it? Because given how many other victims have come forward, although they have not talked to police, but 4 additional women did come forward, and you can only imagine there may be more, and these civil suits will be coming. So part of getting that divorce is trying to save those assets from people being able to come forward and get judgments and put Bijou back out working again. And I am really concerned for her. You know, as a kidney transplant patient, stress and the medications alone that you are forced to take for the rest of your life are expensive, very expensive. So I hope she's doing well. I hope she's taking proper care of herself. Apparently, he had quite a difficult time at the first prison he was taken to. So according to TMZ, which doesn't know what they're talking about, I will tell you the best source that I found for finding out what's up with Danny Masterson, and he is a fabulous YouTuber. His name is JD Delay. So I will include that link, and according to him, and it's also been confirmed, he has been moved to the California Men's Colony in Pismo Beach, California. It is a smaller prison. I actually got to see it with my own 2 eyes a few years ago. I took the train from where I live in the Pacific Northwest down to that area. I love that area. And I actually saw the prison. And when I saw it, I thought maybe it was a juvenile detention center because it was so small. And when I finally got to where I was going, I was still curious and I looked it up and I went, wow, it's a prison, but it is nothing like the maximum security place that he left. So justice might not get dealt out. And apparently he's been hanging out in the infirmary to try to avoid everyone because he knows he's going to get jumped. And I can tell you from having dated someone who was a prison guard that when they had pedophiles and rapists that were acting up because they were always sequestered away from the other prisoners, they would literally turn to them and say, if you don't straighten up, I'm going to put you out with general population. And they would hit their knees begging, please, 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 you know what'll happen. Yeah. Those judges, those guards knew what was going to happen. Yeah, that's why it's such a good threat. So one other thing, just to finally cap all of this off, I don't know if you all happen to see the Daily Mail pictures of when Danny's brother went to meet with Bijou. Now, you could take a photo from various directions and make it look like it's something that it's not. But I have to say, from what I saw, when I saw those photos, I've never kissed my brother-in-law like that before, and I had too. Never. And I've never hugged him like that either. It just seemed odd. And other people noticed this and talked about it as well. Kempire. That's another one of my favorite YouTubers. And again, I will include a link to his channel down below because he also gave me some excellent follow-up in regards to Wendy Williams, which we will be talking about next. However, when I saw these photos with Bijou Phillips and her brother-in-law, it looked like it was a much deeper relationship than somebody consoling. It looked very intimate, like an intimate couple that has an intimate connection. So I think it might be interesting here in the next few years to see where this goes. We may have a new couple. I don't know. My hope is that Bijou will realize that she needs to get out of Scientology. And something I was wondering, I have a couple of interesting Scientology stories with people that I worked for that were in Scientology. And if you want to hear them, let me know. I'm happy to share. All right. So that is that for now. Danny Masterson is off, and it does bum me out that he's in, I feel, a much nicer facility. If you got to pick a prison, I'd pick that prison. Just saying. Hopefully I never have to go or see a prison other than visiting, which is the only way I've gone. Trust me. All right. Let's get started on Wendy Williams. What a mess. And before we do this, I just want to implore you, if you have more than $2 in your bank account, you need a will. And if you have substantial assets, you need to look at doing a living trust or something to protect your assets. And you need to find someone who knows what they're doing. And if I were having a meeting with somebody right now to do this type of estate planning, the very first thing I would ask them, how do I avoid getting in one of these situations? How does that happen? What have you done to safeguard your clients from this? Have you had a client in conservatorship? What did you learn from that experience? We need to ask these questions. And before you close that meeting up with that person, you need to find out, have they had any issues with the Bar Association? Do they sit on committees with the Bar Association? Do they have close ties with some of those judges? Because we're about to go over all of that right now. So here's some of my concerns right now. I watched the documentary. It was very difficult to watch. And I could tell within the first 30 minutes of the first episode, we got a problem. We got a problem, Houston. And I have to tell you, my grandfather had Alzheimer's before we knew what Alzheimer's was. It was the most painful experience to go through. At one point in time, he thought I pushed his chair in at a family dinner, and he handed me a tip. He didn't realize I was his granddaughter, okay? At one point in time, we had to take money. That he liked to carry large sums of cash. He grew up poor, so he would walk around with $300, $400 in his pocket at times. And I went out on a walk with him, and midway through, he got very disorientated. We had to sit down on the curb, and he didn't know where he was. He didn't recognize me. And I was probably about 13 at that point in time. And I went back to my grandmother and my mom and I said, the money needs to come out of the wallet. We need to be keeping closer track of him. He can't drive anymore. Yeah. I had to push for that because my concern was that he might be out taking a walk one of these days, sit down, need to collect himself. Somebody comes up, opens up his wallet to see where he lives, sees all that money. And guess what? Your family member might not come back home. All right. So we want to make sure we are advocating for people and that we're keeping them protected. So let's talk a little bit about Wendy's conservator, shall we? So Sabrina Morrissey is her name, or Sabrina Morrissey. I don't know. However you say it. This is it. All right. So everything I'm about to say, and I want to make this perfectly clear, this is my opinion. This is my opinion based off of what I've heard so far and what I saw. That's all. Just my opinion. And I have to say, I have been very concerned about conservatorship laws in our country for decades. Probably about 10 years ago, there was an article in the Seattle Times that was talking about exactly this, conservatorship abuse. And what we currently have right now is a crisis going on. We have a lot of people who are baby boomers and beyond, high net worth, they never had children, their extended family has passed, and they have no one. So the court jumps in, the court says they need a conservator, they go, they find an attorney, they assign that attorney, and that attorney is supposed to be their conservator. The job of a conservator is to make sure that the person you are overseeing is properly cared for, that they're going to their medical appointments, that you are aware of who they are around, that they are being fed in a timely manner, and most importantly, that they're not left in dangerous situations. And most importantly, that should you contact your conservator, that they respond in a timely manner. From looking at this video, one can see that that was not the case. What definitely concerns me, why on earth, with a person who has such severe lymphedema that she can't even feel her feet, why would you leave her in a penthouse with stairs? Okay? Why would you do that? That, to me, is idiotic, and it makes no sense. I'm relieved to hear that Will, who was her agent, has been fired as of yesterday, and I can't tell you how thrilled I am to know that Sean, her PR person, was fired. The main reason why I'm going after Sabrina on this one, I don't know if you saw, but at one point in time, Sabrina took Wendy to California, where she gave her alcohol, smoked cannabis, and had her go meet with Universal Pictures. She was in no condition to meet with anyone. And I'm thinking to myself, you're a PR person and you're doing this? So I have a really big problem with that. I don't know if you noticed, but Will was sporting several Louis Vuitton very nice sweatshirts. Those are about $650 a pop, people. And as it went on, I don't know if you noticed, but the clothes are really nice. Really nice, all right? Nothing against that. If you could afford that and you could spend that, that's great. But that's not your money. It's someone else's. So, in doing my research on Sabrina, the most disturbing thing I discovered, she sits on 3 different boards with the New York Bar Association. So, much like Tom Girardi, the people who are supposed to be overseeing you, watching you, monitoring you, who can call you on the carpet, well, she sits on those committees. The 3 committees she sits on, the 3 committees. I found out she sits on an ethics committee. That is important to note because it's the ethics committee that sanctions attorneys and makes the motions to get their license pulled when they are in violation of ethics. She also sits on the elderly law committee. So she has her little fingers in all the current legislation and has the power to probably have those laws cater more to what she would like to see. And last but not least, she's on the women in law committee. So one could easily come to the conclusion that the very people who should be looking out and looking over her are not. They are, in fact, probably like this with her tight little buddies. Why? Because they work together, right? She sits on these committees. I don't know about you, but if I have a friend that's close to me and something were to happen, at first my loyalty would probably go to my friend and think, oh, it can't be that. But folks, she had a $30 million lawsuit. And in this, and it's public records, this is public record, Sabrina, public record, she settled. And part of that claim was that she used undue influence and used other people, judges, doctors, etc., to disenfranchise this man of $30 million. All right? Now, going back to what I said earlier, there was a Seattle Times article about conservatorships. So a woman was placed in one. She was in her early 60s, very successful, very high net worth. This court-appointed conservator was charging her $190 to go to her house, pick up 4 bills, put stamps on them, put them in the mail. That's a pretty good job, don't you think? $190? I mean, I do delivery. I go out and I shop for people and I buy their groceries and I deliver to them. I don't get that much an hour, but I digress. What concerned me about this is when this woman spoke up, the conservator went back and got an increase in pay. And when the reporter looked into it, it appeared that this conservatorship also was like double billing for mileage. So there aren't a lot of checks and balances in place in this situation. And people could easily find themselves in that situation. What bothers me is that Wendy's sister is an attorney. You know, whoever did this paperwork for her or drew up her estate plan, I want to throttle them. Because you cannot leave a 21-year-old in that kind of position. It's never going to pass the snuff test with any judge. It will not. Handing over power of attorney to a 21-year-old when your net worth is 20 million plus, a judge is going to look at that sideways and they are going to put a conservator in there. So according to the ex-psychopath narcissist, and again, that's just my opinion, he recently came out and made a little statement about Wendy and her sister and what had happened. And I just want to say, for somebody that can cheat on their wife for well in excess of 30 plus years, have a baby out of wedlock, you don't hold a lot of weight with me. Sorry. And your name's Kelvin. I do want to say, who do I feel the most for? Who do I feel the most for? Obviously, besides my heart breaking for Wendy, her son is phenomenal. He really is. And he did a fabulous job. I don't think it's appropriate to have a 21-year-old with that much pressure put on them. And I will say, when Wendy was with them, that's the best she ever looked. She came back and it was phenomenal. But if you were an everyday watcher like I was, you saw in those final few weeks that Norman consistently had to come in and correct her because she couldn't remember the person's name or she'd use the wrong name for the wrong situation. And that could be lawsuit time. So I wasn't too surprised. I'd had a feeling about this. And also, there are lots of 52-year-old people sitting in memory care right now with alcohol-induced dementia. I was so grateful that Kevin was so honest and so straightforward. And I'm hoping that was a wake-up call for anyone else out there if you might have found yourself drinking a little bit more than you usually do. There is resources out there and help. You don't have to be one of the statistics, Once upon a time, I was quite the heavy drinker, and I'm grateful that there's solutions for this. And the recovery community is a wonderful place. However, Wendy has made it very clear. She's not interested. And part of the beauty of memory care is they have someone there and they were a hardcore drinker, they're not going to just pull the alcohol. What they do is they fill up the alcohol bottles with seltzer and other things, and they make a mocktail. They hand it to them, and everything's Gucci. Everything's fine. And if you think about it, as the memory continues to go, they don't realize. And the thing of it is, when you put somebody in memory care that's specially trained, you're trained to not argue with them. You are trained to not correct them. You go with the flow. And recently, I was in a memory care facility, and everyone there's in a uniform, and they have a little village in there, and these people can go and get their hair cut, go to the store, do their banking, just like everyday life. But why it's better and safer for them is nothing changes. It always stays the same. You have to have that consistency. On top of that, these people who are in this village working with them and providing services have also been specially trained. So in one of these situations, this man was stuck in the 1950s, right? So everyone's conversing and talking, and we're just letting it go. And then he paused for a moment, and I noticed he was just looking me up and down and staring at me, and his eyes were getting as big as saucers. And then he goes, "Where'd you get those clothes from?" So, I'm dressed like it's 2024. I mean, imagine that moment of clarity. He looked at me, and I must have looked like I was from outer space for this poor guy. And so I told him, I worked for a clothing manufacturer, and it was a new style. So you have to be fast on your feet. These are walking angels amongst us, okay? Anyone who works in healthcare these days, but especially if you're taking care of memory care patients, it really takes a special kind of person. It really does. So my hope, and I hope and pray, that her family will be able to get in front of a judge. I would love to see a forensic accounting. I want to know where every penny has gone, who spent it, where, when, how, who approved it. It's time. Also, something to note, the judges refer these conservators. So do you think maybe they got a little cozy relationship? And also, some of these judges have to run for re-election. Do you think that perhaps some of these attorneys are helping them by cutting a little check for that campaign that you've got to run? So I want to warn all of you. I don't know if you're aware, Peter Max, the famous pop artist from 60s and the 70s, has been in a horrible conservatorship. His daughter, Libra Max, has now for 2 decades talked out, screamed about it, tried to get people to care. When Britney Spears' situation went down, finally people started to listen to her more. This January, the judge overseeing everything, slapped her with a gag order. Said, "Stop talking about it." She has a website called freepetermax.com. If you want to learn more about conservatorship laws, I highly recommend that you go there and check it out, and I will include the link. And I just wanted to let you know, she is not allowed to go to her childhood home. She has to go to Central Park, where she sits on a bench. She can see him once, I think it was every other week, for 20 minutes, out in the elements, where they all get to overhear her conversation. She had to fight with her brother to get him off of the board of a company that oversees her father's interests in his art. And it has been another nightmare. And I find it interesting that a judge slaps her with that gag order right when she's finally getting some traction and people are listening. I would like to see the federal government at least provide some guidelines to these states, and let's put some checks and balances in place. And I want to again encourage all of you. Do not be like the vast majority of these boomers walking around with high net worth, no will, no one knows what they want, nobody knows what their plans are, and then put your family in that situation. You know, I think her family honestly thought she was doing better. I don't think that they realized that there was an issue. And if you notice, they got her back up to New York and they had her sequestered. You know, she was cut off from everybody. That's what they do. These conservators and the other people who are being paid by that conservator, of course, follow the money. The truth is always in the money, folks. It's sad to me how people will literally murder their own family member for a few bucks. But unfortunately, there are some situations like that. So please get your affairs in order. And for women, if you're drinking, I want you to think about something. It is not your friend. And the alcohol industry has been gunning for you for the last 20 years. And it bothers me. All of the marketing I see that's being done to the cute little glasses that say mama's happy juice. Ha 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 ha. It's not funny. The fastest growing segment of alcoholics in the United States is mothers who are at home with their children, which means that they're probably getting in the car and driving under the influence with their kids. And I know this to be a fact because I talked to law enforcement and I've seen it, all right? The other fastest growing segment, it's women who are empty nesters as well. And it's women who've suffered a major loss, job, partner, whatever. So across the board, women are being ravaged right now by alcoholism. And if you are a woman and you're drinking excessively, you've just now dramatically increased your risk for dementia, alcohol-induced dementia. And now that we can see how awful that is. On top of that, you dramatically increase your risk for breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and a host of other things, including a heart attack. So from a vanity standpoint, if none of that sways you, it dramatically affects your collagen production and it will age you. I can look at women and I can tell if you were a drinker and if you also spent too much time out in the sun and didn't use some sunscreen. Either way, it is not your friend. And if it's no longer serving you, I want to encourage you. Talk to your doctor. There's lots of options out there. And if you think you might need to go to treatment, I want to encourage you to do inpatient in a woman's only treatment facility. It's important that we go to these places because it is not always safe to share our experiences in a mixed meeting. So that is my 2 cents, people. I think I've mommied the whole world now with this, but I would like to see a forensic accounting done in regards to Wendy Williams' estate. And should any of her family members happen to hear this, please, I'm begging you, continue to speak up. And you also can file a formal complaint against Sabrina Morrissey with the New York Bar Association. That is everyone's right. And you can just voice your concerns in your letter and say, I'm concerned. I heard that in another case, there was $30 million that weren't used, that was later found that those funds were not used in the proper fashion. You also have a right to reach out to the judge in Wendy's case and send him a very respectful letter and say, I'm very concerned. It's my understanding she's currently in a memory care facility. That is the best place for her. And that is probably where she's going to need to be. Now, at a certain point, the memory is so gone that they don't remember if they took their medication for the day. They don't remember if they've eaten or not. So you've got to have them in a much more secure place where they can get this help, have that structure. So my hope is that this will occur, and I'm praying for her son. I don't think that Wendy would have worked as hard as she did her whole entire life for her son to end up with $1 at the end of it all. And this is a problem with this conservatorship, the way it's set up in America. There is no checks and balances to make sure that people are being treated properly. So I want to encourage all of you. If you're as upset about it as I am, take the next steps. And nobody ever does this, but contact your legislators and say, I'm really concerned about conservatorship laws. Something needs to be done. The more people who do this, let me tell you, especially when it comes to a politician or a judge that's up for re-election or a district attorney that's up for re-election, when you all do that, you may think it doesn't do anything, but trust me, they hear the voicemails, they see the email count, and they know, oh, that's someone who might be voting for me. I guess I better act like I care. I guess I better do something about it now. But if you all sit back and go, oh, I'm just going to pray for Wendy and hope for the best, nothing's going to change. Nothing is going to change. So if you love Wendy Williams, and if you care at all about her son, I hope and pray that you will take those next steps. You can file that formal complaint against Sabrina Morrissey with the New York Bar Association. You can reach out to the judge, let him know how you feel. And you can also contact your legislators as well as the legislators in New York to let them know that you want to see changes to the law. You want to see more checks and balances put in place. I personally believe an independent CPA should be looking through every single receipt that these people generate, and they should be able to ascertain if it's correct or not. So we have some checks and balances. That's just one little thing that could be done. And look at what it would change. Anyways, I hope you're all doing well. Remember, take care of yourself, be kind to one another, and I love you. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.